So, really warm welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited. We've got a wonderful guest on, and today's guest is someone who beautifully bridges the ancient wisdom and everyday nourishment. She is the founder of the Mindful Kitchen, where her mission is to empower others to deepen their connection to food, nature, and self, and to rediscover the joy of cooking with plants. So, we've got the wonderful Becks from the Mindful Kitchen here, and she offers personalized Ayurvedic consultations, seasonal cleanses, immersive retreats, and professional trainings, which I've just come through. So I can share a bit about that as well. And she guides people towards a more vibrant, grounded, and fulfilling way of living. Welcome, Bex, to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
It's great to have you here. And a subject everyone loves to talk about, right? Food, or most people, hopefully.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's quite common ground for all of us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so I wanted to actually ask you, what have you eaten today, or what are you planning to eat?
Okay. I went to an exercise class this morning, so I had some stewed apple before the class, about an hour before. That was just because I was up feeling a little bit hungry, but I didn't want to overload my digestion. So I just had some nice warm stewed apple with spices. Really good for cleansing the body, actually, first thing in the morning. And then I did my class and I came back and I just had a warm porridge with some spices in it and some raisins, peanuts on top. Quite simple food. I always like to start the day quite simple.
I did. Let's start by saying Bex changed my life with food, obviously for the better. Not only the taste of it, but it is pure medicine, I would say, the food that you have taught me to cook and that you've placed in front of me on retreats as well. You go and check out Beck's Instagram, which is just a library of beautiful curated foods. But I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about, for those that might be completely new to that word Ayurveda, how could you describe it in simple terms?
Sure. So Ayurveda it loosely translates to the knowledge of life. It's a Sanskrit term. So this has been around for around 5,000 years. It's a healing system, a very holistic healing system. It's actually the oldest healing system in the world. So it evolved alongside yoga, and really the two were meant to be practiced hand in hand. And obviously most people know what yoga is, and that's become very popular in the West, but not so many people know about Ayurveda. Ayurveda is like the foundation for everything. It looks at the health of the body in a holistic way, with the mind, body, and spirit, the emotions, everything that we consume in our environment is also food, and nourishment looks to that, as well as what we put in our bodies from a food perspective. It's very ancient wisdom, but a lot of the principles can be applied to modern day. So the principles are really unchanging. It talks about things like increases and opposites create balance. For example, if you are feeling cold or you have a cold, then to put cold things into your body would obviously increase that cold property and make the imbalance worse. So what we would do instead is have warming foods, warmth, bringing in that warming quality. So really, it's quite intuitive knowledge. It is actually a very complex system. There is a lot. Once you start delving into Ayurveda, it's the kind of an endless pool of knowledge, but really it's about that basic intuition, that intuitive way of being, the fact that we're all very individual, that we all require different things at different times, that we are nature, we are part of nature, and therefore we can look to nature for guidance about how to nourish ourselves. And of course, nature is changeable as well, and so are we. So really tuning into what we need on a daily basis, what we need on a seasonal basis, that might be different from the next person.
Wow, there was so much there that I could go into, but I think particularly that picking up on you said it's very intuitive, and totally when you say it like that, if it's cold, if the weather's cold, try not to put cold things in the body, otherwise it's going to increase that. But I think we have a little bit been put away from our natural intuition, and we get into rhythms and patterns that might not necessarily serve us, but we might have seen on social media or heard a friend say, oh, this thing's really working for me, you should try this thing and it might help your health. And we tend to blindly follow this advice sometimes without stopping and tuning in. So I love the fact that you said it's intuitive. And when you were speaking about your breakfast, I think it's nice to give context to say it's the last day of April.
Wow, I know. Yeah. So kind of in spring now for good, aren't we, really?
And your breakfast was really seasonal. And what you've taught me is that like we'll have that shift every sort of 8 to 12 weeks. We should be thinking about changing. So if you are a person that has porridge for breakfast every day of the year, you could possibly still do that, but you might want to add different elements to it as well. So we are nature, we are the elements, and
Yeah, that's so true. And I think as well, we're in a time at the moment, which is what's known in Ayurveda as kapha season, which is shift from, we've come out of winter, we're in spring. There's a lot of stirring up of the energy because nature's coming alive, and the same thing's happening within our bodies. So what can happen is we can get a bit of stagnancy in our system because things are starting to melt and the toxins are starting to be released. So we really need to help that process along. But having said that as well, it's very much based on what, today is a beautiful, glorious, sunny day. It's probably about 20 plus degrees, which is actually quite a pitta quality in Ayurveda, that more of that fire, that heat. So whilst we're in Kapha season, different days can create different environments and we need to respond to that as well. So for me today, for the rest of the day, I'm going to be focusing a bit more on the cooling, especially around lunchtime when the sun's the highest in the sky, more cooling things, still warm cooked foods that are easy to digest, but using cooling ingredients like mint and coriander, cucumber, those kind of ingredients as well. Just balancing really what's happening in the environment.
so you mentioned Pitta and you mentioned Kapha. So for anyone that doesn't understand those words, would you be able to explain a little bit more about the doshas?
Sure. So in Ayurveda, we talk about everything from an elemental perspective. So everything in the universe is made up of the 5 elements: water, earth, fire, ether, and air. So ether is space. And because of that, we're all born with different variations, varying amounts of these elements, and they can form these sort of different constitutions. So we tend to be one or more dominant in one or more of these constitutions. So there are 3 constitutions that Ayurveda talks about, and these are known as doshas. So we have the vata, the pitta, and the kapha. And the vata is comprised of the ether and the air elements. So if you think about what the qualities of air and ether are, there's a lot of movement, they're quite cold, there's no grounding to them. So when we think about someone who is born with more vata naturally, then you are probably someone that would need more grounding foods to balance you out. So more sweet, earthy foods. And that will help to balance the space and the air elements. And then with the pitta is the quality of transformation, of fire, of heat in the body. So pitta is comprised of the fire and the water elements. And so with that, the nature of fire, very heating, if you're a fiery person, you might be very driven, you might be very ambitious, but you might be prone more towards the anger and the frustration or the jealousy emotions as well. So to balance that, it's more cooling practices, more cooling foods, herbs, those kind of things that will bring that fire back into balance so that the fire doesn't just burn through the body and eat up all your tissues. And then kapha is the earth and the water elements. So more on the sort of heavy side, but very grounded, compassionate. It has this cohesive quality that we see in emotions like love and compassion. But if you have too much kapha or your kapha is a bit out in balance, then you can maybe become a little bit attached or a bit lethargic, maybe a bit overweight. So we see that as well, that kapha imbalance. And to balance that, obviously, you need more of the lighter, the more penetrating foods to balance that out. So it's really great to get an understanding of your individual constitution, what you tend to be prone towards, because then you can use diet and lifestyle to balance that.
And I saw on your website that you offer a dosha quiz. So would that be a good way for somebody to find out their dosha?
Yeah, it's a very basic dosha quiz. It's a really great way to just get an insight into where you might potentially be. But I would definitely recommend, if you really want to understand your unique constitution, that you work with an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I can offer one-to-ones as well along that basis, because it's quite an in-depth thing. But you can definitely get an idea from the quizzes online as a starting point.
Yeah, I think it's nice to dip your toe in, start get to familiar with words and the qualities. And then if you find this is a good lens to look through for your health, if you enjoy that, because there's lots of different lenses we can take, what really appeals to me at the moment is understanding your uniqueness, but also that we're all something bigger, as yoga recognizes unity and union. I think when Becks was teaching me about Ayurveda, that we have our own constitution individually, but this changes throughout life stages, throughout seasons as well. And so it really asked us to be conscious, very awake to ourselves and our needs, and to be fluid in that as well.
I think having that presence with yourself, because there's so much conflicting information out there. You know what you're saying, there's all sorts of different paths you can follow for your health, but really it's about understanding you and your unique nature and what you need. And that does require that presence and that conscious awareness. Yeah.
And nobody knows your body better than you.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes we get super busy and we may have had a health flare up and it's been there for a few months, and we go to the GP and they say, "How long have you been experiencing this?" And suddenly we think, "Oh, I don't know, maybe a few weeks." And actually, perhaps it's been more like a year. The way that we always thank the NHS in the UK. Without it, who knows what kind of even more of an existential crisis that we would be in. But I think the reason that this Eastern medicine has lasted the test of time is because it really does recognize us as this not one size fits all approach. It really asks you to tune inward. So I think everybody should just take that side of it, even if it's not through this lens in particular, but honor your uniqueness and your individuality and celebrate that as well. And know that you're changeable.
100%.
And so you teach that through the Mindful Kitchen. You now just created an incredible training course. Would you just take us back a little bit through your career and how you got into this first of all and where you're at now?
Sure. So I think it was about 9 years ago now that I actually turned to a vegan diet. And originally it was really about fueling my body right, because I was doing a bit of exercise at the time and I wanted to have those health benefits. But it opened up a whole world, because at that time there wasn't really that many plant-based options around. So I was cooking everything from scratch and I was just getting so excited by all of the different things that you could do with plants and just the creativity of that. And then also, of course, I was feeling a lot more vibrant in myself, a lot more energized. And also, I think it really helped to build that compassion as well, and that connection with nature and the connection with others and the connection with myself. It really helped to build that sort of feeling within me. So I was just really excited by the whole process of plant-based food. And I really wanted to share that with others. So originally the Mindful Kitchen, it started as a recipe blog. And I started creating healthy treats and selling them on market stalls across Manchester. And then I started,
Tell us what treats you were making.
it was mostly things like energy balls. So like different flavored energy balls, raw treats using like nuts and seeds and dates, and basically just all natural ingredients. So we weren't using any dairy or gluten or refined sugar. And that was quite a big thing at the time, because there wasn't really much awareness about that, or people would struggle to get things. I then started to work with yoga teachers from my local studio. They started to ask me to cater for their retreats. So this all happened very organically. I was working in a different industry. I was working in the arts as a fundraiser in my main job. And then I was just following this flow and this passion for food and health alongside. And I started catering for retreats, and that became the sort of main focus of the Mindful Kitchen. So bringing this plant-based cuisine to people who were practicing yoga in a retreat setting. And then over time, my journey has evolved as well in terms of I studied healing diets with the School of Natural Medicine. And that really opened me up to Ayurveda. It just struck me in my heart, really, that this makes so much sense. And it was in terms of the diet as well. I was still experiencing some health issues and I couldn't quite figure out why. And I was eating all of the things that you would think would be super healthy, salads and lots of light foods, but I didn't realize that I was actually causing imbalance in my body by not thinking about all of the different qualities of the food. I started studying Ayurveda as a result of that. And I've been really weaving those Ayurvedic principles into a plant-based diet ever since. And so now I'm at the point where I've been working on retreats for about 7 years. And I really wanted to share that knowledge with others. So I set up the Retreat Chef training program. And this has really been a place for me to share the Ayurvedic principles and how to implement those into a plant-based diet that works for a modern day audience as well. And then really how to implement that knowledge into group catering and retreat settings as well.
Congratulations. I've just gone through the first cohort, and in April we finished on retreat in Yorkshire in a beautiful location. And there was something that happened when we all cooked together and we'd all been on that journey, and it is transformational and it is life
Yeah.
changing. And we go out and we're in our own kitchens and we're feeding other people. And the results that I'm getting are people are eating the food and they're going, "What have you done to this food? It just tastes incredible." And these are meat eaters. These are people that are plant-based. They're not vegan. And this is the most surprising thing, I think, when you pour your love into the food, when you create a meal with the six tastes, which maybe we should touch on, do you balance everything out that people not only just satisfied, they're absolutely delighted by the food. So perhaps we've got people listening that has heard how healthy plant-based can be, or perhaps they've heard, oh, it's unsustainable for a long period of time, especially for women perhaps going through the time of the perimenopause or the menopause, and they're showing a lot of symptoms around fatigue and perhaps even blood loss and unpredictable cycles. And they might be really interested in bringing more plant based in or balancing it out with some of their health symptoms. Should we maybe talk about the six tastes and how we can balance a meal and how it could really work for a modern day woman or modern day human?
Sure. Yeah. So with the six tastes, when we do the retreat chef training, and Sarah, we really look at how to balance a meal, not just from a protein, carbohydrates, and fat perspective, but also from a taste perspective. Because as per Ayurveda, the six tastes, what creates those nutrients in the body that support our tissues, that build our tissues, and that allow all of the systems to thrive. So the six tastes is sweet, salty, sour, pungent, bitter, and astringent. And you can find them across all of the plant-based foods. You can find all of these tastes. When we include the six tastes in our meals, either in one meal or throughout the day, and I think what can happen is we can lean a bit towards the sweet, salty, sour taste and not have so much of the bitter, pungent, and astringent. And then we just never feel satisfied. We always need more food. We don't ever feel that sense of completion. And I'm sure you've experienced this, Sarah, as well on the course when we have created those meals with the six tastes. You just feel so full and satisfied in all of the ways without feeling overburdened as well. The body doesn't feel overburdened. So this is what we try and bring in to the retreat chef training and onto retreats, because it helps people to go away feeling really satisfied, really full, really nourished from a holistic perspective as well.
Thank you for going into that. And that you touched in as well, what sometimes when people are thinking about going on a wellness retreat, it is an emotional thing eating, and they do get worried that they might feel hungry, that they might be deprived. But actually, on my first yoga retreat that I went to, I filled my bag with a couple of chocolate bars and felt the need to sneak down to the end of the garden and eat one. But actually, I wasn't tuning in. I was very satisfied with the food that I was eating. And probably that was from an emotional hangover from a long time ago. And so I think it's important to say to people that are coming on retreats with a professional chef that's trained in nutrition and Ayurveda, you are going to be more than satisfied. And what would you say some of the favorite meals are that people say that they eat on retreat with you? Some of your most popular dishes?
So one of the things that people always go away talking about is the almond cheese. So we make this homemade almond cheese. It's a very simple process, really, isn't it, Sarah? But I think because people always think they're going to miss the dairy and they panic a bit. But the almond cheese always wins people over because it provides that satisfaction. And also having things like pickles that can really elevate food and add lots of flavor. I think people really appreciate that variety and having all of the different colors and the different things. And one of the things people often say after my retreats is that they felt full, but they didn't feel overfull, and that actually the quantity was perfect. So sometimes we have this tendency to want to overeat. But actually, by including the six tastes and having a variety of meals on a retreat, people often come away feeling really satisfied and they think, oh, I don't actually need as much as I thought I did. So yeah, the almond cheese, always the treats as well. We often do things like stuffed dates with, we made an almond and orange butter and we fill the dates with that and we cover them with chocolate. People always go wild for those. And just having treats that are not completely laden with sugar and dairy and gluten as well, I think is it's really insightful for people because you often don't think, or you don't feel like you're eating a treat unless you have those things. To have that satisfaction from the sweet taste without all of the sort of stuff that clogs us up can really benefit people, I think.
Absolutely. And so you'll not only never go hungry, but there'll always be a sweet treat on retreat with either Becks or myself or any of your first cohort chefs. So tell us a bit more about the structure of the course if people are interested and when they can join the next one.
So the next course starts on the 31st of August. We've just finished the first program. It's a 3-month program and it's a mixture of online workshops, live workshops and e-learning videos as well. And then we also have an in-person retreat. So we have 6 live online days where we spend the full day together on a Sunday, every other Sunday. And we will cook different recipes, try to balance it really between a mix of the Ayurveda theory, the practicalities of retreat catering and what that actually looks like in reality. And then also just getting creative in the kitchen and cooking together. And it's just been such a lovely experience, hasn't it? With spending that Sunday together in the kitchen with a group of like-minded people and just cooking up beautiful dishes and seeing as well how everybody adds their own spin to the dishes as well. Community WhatsApp group as well. And I think over the course, we've really built that real strong sense of community between us. And there's been a real sense of support. So by the time it comes to the retreat weekend, which we've just had this month, everybody feels like they know each other a little bit. It was just such a lovely experience, wasn't it? To get together in person. And on the retreat weekend, you have the opportunity as well to actually cook some of the food that you've learned. So you'll have a project to create a menu for a season of your choice. And then you will choose one of the dishes to create on retreat. So you have that practical experience of actually being in a retreat setting and cooking for a group of people, which I think is really valuable because you just learn so much more from the actual experience of doing it. I know there's things around things like timings, things like that can only really be learned from doing. So having that chance to do that before you go off and become a retreat chef, I think is really valuable. The next program starts on 31st of August and it runs until the end of November. And it's the same format. So we have the 6 live sessions, e-learning videos to do in your own time, and then the retreat weekend at the end.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful structure. Bex will hopefully be on cohort 6 or something by then. But it's a great format because you get to learn how to cook in your own kitchen, which is obviously something so valuable you're doing all the time. And then you're working in that live environment where there's a bit of time pressure, there's other people around, you're in a kitchen where you're not familiar with the utensils or the equipment. So you're building so many skills with that. And, I was quite nervous and I was a little bit unsure, but I think when you've done it, you can feel a real sense of achievement and you can feel really proud about what you've done. And with the work that I teach, a lot of trauma-informed somatic care, and look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and your basic needs like food and shelter. And we are the way that modern day farming is and the time pressure on us because of work, we are being challenged with our food. We're not really always getting the nutrients we need. We do need to learn more. We do need to think about this. But through this course, I've been really able to look into some of that self energy, which is that creative side of it. And just the way that you present the food and elevating it with certain sprinkles or flowers that are adding even more nutrients. I could really speak to this helping to have a clearer mind and more vitality and more vibrancy. But like you mentioned, the community, I just think the era of self-healing on your own is over and that doing it as a community is amplifying the experience so much. So we've got like a sisterhood circle now, which is great. If you love talking about food, sharing food pictures. And I think a few of us messaged to say, oh, I feel a bit lost now it's over. And there was such a sense of connection there. And so I think when you dip your toe into Ayurveda, you really unlock such a big healing potential within you. And I think it's important to come with that beginner's mindset because, like you said, it's a big subject and you can only digest a little bit at a time. So it's something that you're a walking embodiment of, you're living it every day. And it's taken your life and your business somewhere I'm sure you couldn't imagine 10 years ago.
Gosh, no, I had no vision. This just happened really. And I've just followed that flow. Part of the Ayurvedic way of living as well is really just to flow and evolve in that natural way. And like you've said before, tuning into that presence and that conscious awareness of what you need. And I think the brilliant thing about the training program is, like you say, being in a group setting, it can really hold you accountable to yourself as well. So you can learn things along the way, but you've got that structure to the 3 months where you're experimenting with new recipes, thinking about how you can bring in those qualities, those Ayurvedic principles, how you can make things more digestion friendly. And then the same with this work, really, as a retreat chef, because you're always thinking about menus and creating food for others. It feeds you as well. It feeds how you live your life and how you create food for yourself and how you nourish yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it'd be really nice just to speak about the environmental impact of eating more seasonally, which again, like a few decades ago, I wouldn't have had a clue. Eating frozen foods in the dead of winter really was aggravating my vata and my mental health was not in a good place. But also when we're eating out of season, eating avocados or strawberries all year round, there is a negative side effect on the environment. So, how does Ayurveda support that more environmentally friendly way of living?
Yeah, Ayurveda is very much about that connection with nature, and within that, it also automatically really takes into account the environment because it's very much about eating seasonal, unprocessed foods that are from the earth that are local to us. There's so many things we can do as well. I think with in terms of like things like avocados that get flown over. There are other ways of making guacamoles and things using peas or courgettes or things that are more seasonal for us, that you can get really creative with what's available locally and just supporting that organic way of farming as well. Because in Ayurveda, we really focus on this concept of ahimsa, which is around non-violence towards all living things. And that also includes nature, it includes each other as well. And so by adopting that principle of ahimsa, we're not necessarily saying you have to be vegan, strict vegan all of the time, because vegan has different connotations with you could be eating lots of junk food from the supermarket that's been processed that hasn't been created in an environmentally friendly way. But it's really thinking about what impact we're having on our surroundings, on our environment, on nature. So that could be maybe having a little bit of meat or dairy or animal products every so often, but where has that food come from? How has that animal been treated? How are you connecting with that? Are you shoveling meat down every day, or are you thinking medicinally right now? I feel like I really need this product, and I'm going to respect the animal by making sure I support a good farm. Those sort of things as well. But really, ahimsa does encourage us to move more towards that plant-based diet where the majority of what we eat is locally sourced, plant-based, seasonal produce.
Amazing side effects, not only for the environment, but for your wallet as well. If you're eating what's in season, it hasn't got the carbon footprint, it hasn't got the air miles there. So it should be more locally grown, it should be more affordable. And I think it's worth mentioning protein a lot because when I say I'm plant based or I eat more vegan than any other way, people always say, "What about protein?" I'm sure many vegans will roll their eyes at this one because I find vegan, you do need to think about it, but it's so readily available for a plant based diet. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge amount of plant-based proteins that are so nourishing for us. We just have to know a little bit about how to cook them in a way that is absorbable to our body. It is easier to get like iron and certain nutrients from meat, but then you have a whole load of other side effects when you go down that road. Whereas with plant-based food, if you cook it in the right way, you can really absorb those nutrients really well. So plant-based proteins include things like lentils, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes. There's quinoa is a brilliant one as well. We talk a lot about digestion in Ayurveda as well. The priority really is about how you digest your food. So when we're cooking with things like lentils and beans, we soak them and we wash them properly and we cook them from scratch. And that makes it more absorbable. And also by adding spices to food as well, it makes the protein more easy to digest. So thinking about how we actually pair ingredients can really help as well. So there's just, and with things like, for example, if I'm making a soup, I will always add in some soaked lentils or some soaked seeds or some sort of protein, even just cooked quinoa can go in there. And I'll blend that into the soup. So it becomes a more substantial meal and you're making sure that you're getting all of your needs met. It can be easy to forgo the proteins a little bit. But if you're just making sure that you're adding things to each meal. We've made things like sprinkles on the course as well, where you have little nut and seed sprinkles for meals. Just by adding these little things to your meal, you absolutely will get your protein needs met. I think we're in a bit of a world where protein's like the buzzword and everybody's worried about protein. But you don't, if you eat a balanced diet, you get your protein needs met, absolutely. And anything in excess is going to cause imbalance. So whilst you do need your protein, you also need your balance of carbs and fat and vegetables and fruits. And it's just all about moderation and having that balance of everything. And you can get that so well on a plant-based diet.
Yeah, and things like eating smarter. And I help a lot of women through the perimenopause years, and it's about having that protein in the morning, which will really sustain your energy rather than snacking all day long, eating carbs, really feeling hangry and feeling those blood sugar changes. And then really those cravings are kicking in because you are depriving yourself. So things like protein in the morning can be really sustainable for your energy. And Bex mentioned about looking at digesting your food in the right way, which we called Agni, the digestive fire. In yoga, we recognize that as well around the solar plexus energy affecting your confidence and your willpower and your ambition. So it's a really powerful center within the body. And yeah, so many people have got digestive issues. IBS is so common, bloating, and just general discomfort in that area. So you share some really simple techniques, certain spices and herbs, and even a bit of circadian eating, when to eat your heavier meals and things like that will have a really big effect. And this knowledge is quite intuitive, like Beck shared. It's just that we tend to follow a structure that might fit in and around work. So this is really just an invitation for you to be a bit more creative and think outside the box and think in a way that works for you as well. And I often hear people that come on retreat, they eat plant-based for the whole weekend or for the days that they're with us. And they say, I really wish I could eat this way at home, but I can't because of my family. So have you got any suggestions or advice on maybe how just to adapt or make it more family friendly if you're thinking of going plant-based and you think my teenager's definitely not going to get on board with that?
Yeah, I think having like a base meal that you can then add different things to. Certain people will eat different things and will like different things in your family. And you might all have different constitutions as well. And you might be dealing with different imbalances. But if you can have a base meal like a soup or a stew that is good for everybody, and then you can add things to that sort of thing, or a bulk making different things that you can build bowls with. So having your roasted vegetables, your cooked beans, cooked lentils, things that you can create a dish from, having different dressings, different dips made up. If you can create some time to actually batch make things, then you can add different things to different meals. And it just makes it so much simpler, especially when you're cooking for lots of different people, to have those different options available.
Absolutely. And I think that we should all be eating slightly differently because we have such a unique body and we've all got different health conditions going on as well. So just like Beck said, simplify it, make a main dish or have all the builders and then you just make your plate how you want it. And then everyone gets to be satisfied and happy and balance their own health as well. So thanks for that. That's amazing advice. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about Ayurveda or working with you on retreat or coming to do your chef training?
So I'm on Instagram and I am the Mindful Kitchen. So it's @_ the Mindful Kitchen _. I do a lot mostly on Instagram and then that feeds through to Facebook as well. So the Facebook is the Mindful Kitchen with Becks. And then I have my website as well, the-mindful-kitchen.co.uk, and I'm available on email. So if you go to my website, you'll be able to find my contact details on there. Just please reach out if you've got any questions about Ayurveda, about the training course, or any other questions about food. The next course is coming up. So if you are interested in that, then I'm happy to have a chat about that and explain a little bit more about what it entails and answer any questions that you might have as well.
Thank you so much. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Thank you so much for creating the Mindful Kitchen and creating the course. Look forward to taking my plant-based knowledge out into the world and sharing it with my community. So thanks for cooking me amazing food and helping me to be part of your ripple effect.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for having me, and thank you for just giving your full self to the course. It was amazing to watch that journey for you, and I just can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you. And I'd love to share. It really stirred something deep inside me because, as I mentioned to you, when I landed in Yorkshire from Kent, and I had quite emotions stir up in me, and I thought, oh, I'm doing this because I want to cook better and I want to cook for others and it to be really tasty. But for me, I realized actually this connection to animals, a lot of us say we're pet lovers or animal lovers. And I'm not saying become fully vegan or become fully plant-based if that's not for you. But we do need to think about the treatment of animals with modern day farming. It's really quite stressful on the animals, which then goes into your own body. And like Ayurveda teaches, we're all connected. We are all the elements. And so it stirred up inside me how important it is, the plant-based concept of your course. So yeah, it's stirred something up in my heart. So huge thank you. And we look forward to catching you on your stories and following you on
Oh,
Instagram.
thank you so much.